Today, we're diving into one of the most shocking and honestly one of the most important stories in the history of workers' rights. We're talking about the Radium Girls. I want you to just imagine this for a second. You land a fantastic job. The pay is great, you've got independence, it's everything you wanted. But what if the very thing you did all day, every day, was silently, secretly destroying you from the inside out? Well, for hundreds of young women back in the 1920s, this wasn't just some scary thought. It was their terrifying reality. So how in the world did this happen? Well, to get it, we've got to go back to the Roaring '20s. World War I is over, spirits are high, and there's this incredible sense of optimism. And right at the center of all that excitement was this seemingly magical, brand new element, radium. Now, people didn't really understand radium yet, but they saw that it could glow in the dark, and they'd heard it was being used to successfully treat cancer. So naturally, it got this reputation as a complete miracle cure-all. People were absolutely fascinated by it. This stuff was considered so amazing, companies started putting it in, well, everything. I'm not kidding. You could go out and buy radium-laced water, butter, cosmetics, even toothpaste. The message to the public was clear. This glowing element was the secret to good health and endless energy. So when factories started popping up to make these cool new glow-in-the-dark watches, the jobs were a huge deal. They specifically hired young women who were told they had the perfect small, nimble hands for the job. And for these women, this was an incredible opportunity for financial freedom. And they even got a nickname, the Ghost Girls. Why? Because at the end of a shift, the radium dust made their clothes, their hair, even their skin shimmer and glow in the dark. At first, they loved it. They thought it was glamorous. They'd wear their nice dresses to work just so they'd sparkle when they went out dancing later. But that nickname, it would eventually take on a much darker, much more chilling meaning. Okay, so let's go inside the factory and look at exactly how this dream job turned into an absolute nightmare. The danger wasn't just the radium itself, it was the very technique they were taught to use day in and day out. This was the process, over and over again, hundreds of times a day. To get the brush to a super fine point for those tiny numbers on the watch face, they were instructed to put the brush between their lips. Lip, dip, paint. Lip, dip, paint. Here's the deadly problem. Our bodies mistake radium for calcium. So with every single number they painted, they were swallowing a tiny dose of poison that went directly into their bones. And you know what happened when the women asked, "Hey, is this stuff safe?" They were told, absolutely. The managers insisted the radium was completely harmless. They were lied to, plain and simple. And just to give you an idea of how innocent they were to the danger, some of the girls would even playfully paint their teeth or their fingernails with the radium paint before a date, just for a fun, radiant smile. They had no idea at all what it was doing to them. And it didn't take long for the horrifying consequences of that poison to start showing up. The women's own bodies began to turn on them in the most terrible ways imaginable. To really understand the human cost of this, we need to talk about one of the women by name. Her name was Molly Maggia. She was one of the very first style painters to get sick, and her story is just devastating. It all started with something as simple as a toothache. But then her teeth started falling out. When the dentist pulled them, her gums wouldn't heal. Instead, these huge, painful ulcers grew in their place. Her jawbone literally began to crumble. It got so bad they had to remove her entire lower jaw. Within a single year of that first toothache, Molly was dead. And at the time, doctors were so confused, they listed her cause of death as syphilis. Now, the doctors back then might have been baffled, but today we know exactly what was happening. It's called radiation injury. The radium was emitting ionizing radiation, and it was causing catastrophic damage to her cells. I know this is a difficult image to see, but it's a really powerful illustration of what ionizing radiation can do to the human body. Now, the Radium Girls' exposure was internal, happening slowly over time, but the destructive force at the cellular level was exactly the same. So here's the truly insidious part. Radium is like a master of disguise. The body thinks it's calcium, so it welcomes it in and deposits it right into the bones. And from there, the radium just sits, constantly shooting out radiation, destroying bone marrow, riddling their bones with holes, basically causing their bodies to decay from the inside out. As more and more women started showing the same horrifying symptoms, they knew something was terribly wrong, and they realized they had to fight back. This became a true David versus Goliath story. So on one side, you have this massive corporation, the US Radium Corporation. They're furiously denying everything. They even paid for fake studies to come out and say that radium was perfectly safe. But on the other side, you had the undeniable truth. Dozens of women dying in the exact same way. And finally, you had a doctor, Harrison Martland, who developed a test that proved without a doubt that radium was the killer. This fight for justice became a desperate race against the clock. When a lawyer named Raymond Berry finally took their case, some of the women were so sick they literally had to be carried into the courtroom. They knew they probably wouldn't live long enough to see any of the money. They were fighting for the girls who were still working in those factories. It was a long, brutal, drawn-out battle, but it finally came to a head in 1938. A woman named Catherine Wolfe Donahue, another dial painter who was literally on her deathbed, won her case. And that victory, it set a legal precedent that could no longer be ignored. And this is the part of the story that matters to all of us right now. Because of their incredible courage and their ultimate sacrifice, they created a legacy of safety that protects millions of us every single day we go to work. This point is so important. Before the Radium Girls, if you got sick or hurt because of your job, well, that was basically considered your problem. The idea that a company was legally responsible for keeping its workers safe was almost non-existent. Their fight changed everything. They established a principle that we now take for granted. Their struggle led directly to life-saving changes. It forced the issue of corporate responsibility into the public conversation, and it laid the essential groundwork for the creation of OSHA, the federal agency that, to this day, is responsible for making sure our workplaces are safe. So the next time you see a workplace safety poster or hear about someone using protective equipment on the job, I want you to think of the Ghost Girls. And just ask yourself, what other protections do I have today simply because those women fought for them all those years ago? Their incredible fight ensures that a job, no matter how great it seems, should never, ever be a death sentence.